This video is brought to you by Squarespace. If there is one job I would never want to have in the video games industry, it's project lead for DLC add-ons. Man, that is a tough gig. For every Blood and Wine or Prey Mooncrash or Resident Evil 7 End of Zoe, there are a dozen more phoned in Far Cry Lost on Mars or Destiny 2 Curse of Osiris's. When season passes are announced for our games, the only justified response to that is skepticism, since most DLC add-on packs that are worth reinstalling for are the exception, not the rule. Enter Peril on Gorgon, a DLC add-on for Obsidian's The Outer Worlds. Now, I didn't know this was coming out until it was announced suddenly for a September 9th release date on all platforms except Switch. Regardless, I was excited to learn of its existence because I'm a big Obsidian fan. I loved The Outer Worlds when I reviewed it last year. I loved Grounded when I reviewed the early access last month. I'm just always down for more Obsidian. Sad times though, because this isn't great. It's not terrible, and in a very specific use case, it can be okay. But that use case is super narrow, and I think the vast majority of people who might be interested in this will be disappointed by it. It's a DLC that tries to ignore that the people purchasing it have already finished the game, fully built out their characters, have collected every weapon or armor type. They've seen it all, and yet Peril on Gorgon tries to get away with not adding really anything new to experience other than a rather barren and awkward new landscape and an admittedly interesting tale. At $15 for 7 hours of content, it's by no means a rip-off, but as always, the more important equation is this DLC worth your time? And I'm not so sure. Anyway, let's roll some of the trailer.
Danger. Intrigue.
A word of advice before you go, Captain? Trust no one.
What will you find on Gorgon?
Peril on Gorgon is a DLC expansion for The Outer Worlds. You do need to own The Outer Worlds base game to play it, and you need to have finished up the Monarch section of the game before you can access this content. After that point, you'll receive a mysterious package which will kickstart things, and you can visit Gorgon whenever you choose. It's essentially just adding another completely optional location to your playthrough. If there's one thing I quite enjoyed about this expansion, it's the story. As you saw from the trailer, it very much positions itself as a 1950s serial where a ne'er-do-well scoundrel falls short on an assignment from a mysterious benefactor and you have to fill his shoes. You're summoned to an enchanting manor in the stars which overlooks the Gorgon asteroid, and it's there you'll meet the heiress intent on restoring her fortune and her family name. To its credit, Peril on Gorgon has the same snappy writing you've come to expect from Obsidian. Each of the characters you meet have the sorts of personalities and witticisms that make engaging them consistently enjoyable. The broader plot is also clever enough, and I found myself genuinely drawn into the mystery of it all and keen to uncover the secrets of the abandoned research facilities on Gorgon. It's also pretty damn funny when it wants to be.
Please follow. Do not stray from the path.
Don't worry, little fella. We're mostly law-abiding folk.
Gorgon's story mirrors that of other locations such as Monarch, only it lacks the breadth and stodginess that those had. Those locations were filled with vastly more NPCs, warring factions, competing interests. Gorgon's story remains focused on a very select cast of characters. This was no doubt intentional both tonally and practically. The more intimate tale invokes the sort of Cluedo or Knives Out intrigue that the developers were no doubt going for, while also helping to keep production costs down given that there probably wasn't a lot of dollars assigned to making this DLC. This same thriftiness was applied to Gorgon itself, the space you're exploring during your 7 hours of sleuthing. Gorgon is an abandoned research facility complex where something terrible has happened, and as a result, there's pretty much no one there. Again, this is intentional. The story that the developers wanted to tell was about an abandoned facility. No one's there, lots of empty space, etc. However, I suspect that they chose that location because it again fit within their budget constraints. While Gorgon's story manages to eke by, Gorgon as a location does not. Its skybox is no less impressive than any other, but getting on the ground, you can't help but feel as though there's just nothing going on. Other locations throughout your travels all felt teeming with life. They were bustling even when they weren't supposed to be. Gorgon's town is entirely empty except for one vendor and a few barflies. The broader world has but a handful of buildings awkwardly scattered, housing just a minuscule number of enemies. I get that Gorgon is meant to be empty, but just because it's meant to be that doesn't mean it's good. It's sadly not. Gorgon feels like an alpha build for a real Outer Worlds level that will never make its way into beta. The space itself is uniquely frustrating to traverse. The Outer Worlds cop flack for the design of its open world, feeling rather enclosed and linear, even when it was trying to be open and expansive. Rather than listen to that feedback, Obsidian have tripled down here. Gorgon is essentially a two-tiered canyon that very much feels like an on-rails experience. Often you'll be running around at the top layer wanting to get down to something directly beneath you, but there's no lift nearby, so you have to run through the path the developers have set for you, snaking your way back to where you began, only now one level lower. It sort of reminded me of being trapped in IKEA, where they make you walk through the whole store, even though you only want one thing right near the exit. That's Gorgon. As for what you'll be doing on Gorgon, there's not a lot. I counted a total, I think, 3 side quests and 1 main quest. All of the 3 side quests were essentially fetch quests. One, a woman asked me to go and find the corpse of her husband and bring back his flask. I went there, I picked it up, I fast traveled back to her, mission complete. There were no surprises or complications, it was just do the thing, I did the thing, and then the thing was done. The other quests are similar, though one of them does involve collecting audio logs, which are interesting to listen to, but short-lived. The main quest is where it's at. There's around 8 or 9 steps to it, 2 of which take you off Gorgon, once to Byzantium and once to a secret lab, which is pretty cool to be honest. Other than that, you'll be exploring Gorgon's abandoned facilities, left vacant after Space's choice upped and left. The exploration is pretty standard stuff. Just walk into the building, shoot some bad guys, follow the marker, click on the person or the audio log thing for some exposition, and then on to the next stage of the quest. It's quite ho-hum, and the enjoyable story and writing doesn't really savor it from what feels like very phoned-in mission design. The biggest issue with Peril on Gorgon is just how little new stuff this expansion brings to the table. I look at something like Control's Foundation DLC as a good template. Now, this was a 4-hour DLC that added a new area, new story, new lore, and also a new mechanic, the ability to manipulate rock formations. Combined with the arcade pleasure that comes from playing Control, it was a brief but satisfying experience because its additions were just enough to make the experience feel different. In Gorgon, nothing really feels different because it isn't. Well, mostly not. According to the developers, there are some new weapons and armor, but I think these might be 1 or 2 very specific weapons or weapon skins or weapon stats or something, rather than entirely new categories, since I don't think I encountered anything like that. I think I spotted 1 new enemy type, maybe. There's no new companions. There's apparently some new perks available, but no new skills. The core of Control's gameplay was its moment-to-moment combat. The adrenaline-fueled excitement of tearing up chunks of rock and hurling them at your enemies as you dash and float and slam down. It was like a spectacle fighter, like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta. Just fun to pick up and play. The Outer Worlds is not like that. It's an RPG that isn't particularly good in its moment-to-moment play. It shines in the immersion it creates, in the incremental increase in power you achieve from leveling up, in the build choices you make with skills and perks, in the outfitting of your character with weapons and armor, in the relationships you develop with your companions. If a DLC expansion for a game like this is going to earn its place, I think it has to offer not only a new story beat, but also meaningful improvements to the core gameplay experience. I can't definitively say what's new here and what's not because I wasn't given any sort of bullet point list, but I can tell you that none of it felt new. It all felt like the same stuff from before. The decision to sandwich this game in as an optional side quest rather than making it endgame content was, I think, the wrong call. Most people who play this will be like myself, those who already have high-level characters, complete builds, and vast stores of ammo and consumables. With this head start, this expansion was a complete cakewalk. I could just steamroll over almost everything when I was doing this because the content had to be tuned to be doable by players with far less skills, perks, and gear than I had. One specific segment had this kind of boss that was really hyped up, like, oh, watch out for that guy, man, he's really dangerous, you gotta watch out for him, man, he'll wreck your shit. And I was like, whoa, okay, cool, that sounds exciting. I found this guy like 5 minutes later, and I killed him in like 5 seconds. It was silly, you know, it's very silly. The combination of all this stuff made Peril of Gorgon feel really flat for me. I'd explore these large, empty, tunnel-like spaces, suddenly chancing on an enemy only to immediately melt them, then I'd trudge onto the next thing, knowing full well that nothing I pick up will be an upgrade, and when I finally complete the fetch quest, the payoff just isn't there. So this is where we get to the recommendation and who this might be for. If you are someone like myself who really enjoyed the Outer Worlds, and you only want to play through this expansion, so you're not doing like a whole fresh playthrough, I actually wouldn't recommend this to you. You're in for a fairly dull 7 hours that would be better spent elsewhere. If, however, you're planning another playthrough, or you're playing through the Outer Worlds for the very first time, I probably would recommend this. It's not the best content the game has to offer, but the story works well, and it's another location that you can further the development of your character. Again, if I was leveling up, collecting gear, gaining experience, etc., I might have enjoyed this a lot more because I'd be connected to those core gameplay elements for an RPG like this. But diving in at a high level with a complete party with nothing to really earn or collect or unlock, it just felt like very C-tier Outer Worlds content, and very safely skipped even if you were a big fan of the main game, as I was. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace lets you build your own super professional looking website, and they make it really easy to do so with custom templates, intuitive design tools, and even stuff like web domains and hosting. You can even add stuff like a comment section to your website so you can start building a community around whatever it is that interests you, be it gaming or photography or pets or Japanese food or whatever floats your boat. You can set up your own website right now with the free trial, and if you want to commit, you can get 10% off your first purchase by clicking the referral link in the description below. Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching it. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down so I know to do better for next time. If you enjoyed yourself, consider subscribing, and if you really enjoyed yourself, maybe consider hitting that notification bell so you never miss a video. You can see my patrons here on the left. They're awesome. They're amazing. If you want to join them, check out my Patreon page. Thank you again. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.